Greetings, everyone. It's so wonderful that we are coming here again to have another conversation. Yes, Nita and I decided to have another conversation on Semi-Hermit's life. Why did we want to talk about Semi-Hermit's life? Um, Personally, for me, it's because that I think people has a certain perception, certain view on hermit life. But the fact that Nita and I use the word semi-hermit, and the very interesting thing is that Nita is single and I'm married, but yet we are living a semi-hermit life. Nita kind of semi-hermit life is very different from my semi-hermit life. So we were going to share more about that. Well, Nita, maybe you want to start the ball rolling about your semi-hermit life as a single.
Uh, I
Okay.
think that, firstly, I said yes to the invitation from Elizabeth
Mhm.
because I believe in, how we are divinely led or led by inspiration.
Mm.
Um, I think that personally, I think that for me, being single is, in my opinion, it's just the way that my life has been, or is the way that I've chose to live my life. So I don't know how it is different from other people's life. I think that for all of us, we just need to be true to how we are called. And I think that perhaps my semi-hermit, the way it's different, it's also uh, for most of the time I stay in a rural place, and so but it's not rural, in the way that Elizabeth's place is, in the sense that I'm not surrounded by forests or by lots of nature. I have nature, but I would say that I live in a small town rather than, in the countryside. So hence, and the rest of the time when I am not so hermit, it is when I am doing work in big cities like Hong Kong or London or in Singapore, etc. So for me, that the balance is both. It's keeping, it's keeping a presence in the big cities where a lot of things are taking place, where maybe there might be more interest in helping to find work-life balance, maybe more interest in um, people finding space for themselves because their lives are so busy and so hectic. So when I am in the rural setting, I have more space to myself, and I think that's where I gain energy. That's when I gain nourishment for myself. So it's always, balancing the self-care with being available to others. Of course, I think that the way that we are able to live this life is possible, mainly, and especially in today's world, mainly, we have to say we are grateful for the use of internet, because while I don't have internet every single day or day round. I have internet, or I have access whenever I need it. And I think that's been a really huge blessing, a huge gift for myself, not having to have internet the whole time. Because I think for myself at least, sometimes internet itself is the distraction. It's good that we can use it to access news, to stay in touch with friends and family, to do our work. But at the same time, I think that sometimes it's very easy to just, in my opinion, for
Mhm.
myself, waste time on the internet. I think that we get caught up with so many things that are really unnecessary. So I found it to be a gift, to be a blessing, to not have internet all the time. But whenever I need the internet, I have access to it through, through the use of someone else's office. A friend has kindly said yes to my using their office when I do need to work. So again, like I said, it's mainly because I live in a small town. It's not really a countryside where I'm in the middle of nowhere. So having some neighbors around is also part of the gift. So yeah, so I don't personally think that it's being single is a different life from others. But at least when you are true to your own desires or your own calling, um, some people are happier single, and
Mhm.
some might be happier being married or living with a partner. Um, and I have felt very blessed and very, very grateful to have been single, because I have had the freedom to do a lot more things than perhaps friends with children have not been able to do. So, it's being true to who we are and true to what is our preferred way of life.
Mhm.
Yes, and you, Elizabeth?
Well, me. I think I lived really the semi-hermit life more when I moved into the nature area. Before that, yeah, I did the contemplation with Nita, and also that came up for me. What is a balanced life? At first, it was a at first I used the term life semi-monastic. Then, when I come to think about it, I don't really monastic in a way. They have their own routines, they have their certain practices, but I don't really follow a particular practices. I respect the monks and nuns, because I've been to the abbey and see how they very faithfully um, caught to the desire to have a very routine life. For me, that's why how the shifts from semi-monastic to semi-hermit. And semi in the sense that because it's not a hermit life whereby I totally isolate myself from everybody. I think the term hermit, somehow people get the sense of that they close up themselves, and then they don't associate with people. Actually, it's not true, because there's also a priest here that we got to learn. He lives a no, he doesn't live a semi hermit life. He lives a hermitage life. He chose hermit life after his what is the word that you become a priest. So he actually took care of the church, and then he still would run masses. It's just that he spent a lot of time in prayer, in silence, and so forth and so forth. So as undergoing the contemplation, it became very clear, because my whole process journey has always been self-care, loving self, and it's very clear that I would really love to have a more balanced life in the way I live. And so one of the reasons is why I moved to the nature, and plus that I'm married, I have a husband. He doesn't embrace a semi-hermit life. He's just a normal human being, still having full-time job, going on with his life. But yet I'm the one who choose this semi-hermit life, where I spend um, time where alone, um, contemplating, doing my things, doing my own things. It's much more more balance of me time and serving others, because in the past I tend to spend a lot of time for others. Very, very, actually, actually, now that I come to I more the more I reflect, I realize that I have been giving a lot of time to others, including my husband as well, to church ministry, to work, to family, so forth and so forth. So when the theme self-care came for me, it was very clear what is actually self-care. I just blogged yesterday about it. What is actually loving self-care? What actually more of what is a balance self-care, actually balanced life, holistic in a very where it's um, involved not just on the spiritual, because sometimes we can just focus on the spiritual aspects, and then we forgot our body, we forgot our emotions. So uh, we can sway to just one extreme. So but when we use the word holistic, it's really encompassed as a whole human being, and the mind, because we have the mind with the heart with the body, and we have our soul. So how do we actually strike a balance in that? So for me, married, I still serve my husband. My husband's needs as well. So it's not that semi-hermit life, I'm totally in silence and I don't laugh, I don't joke, or I don't talk. In fact, I'm very chatty when my husband came back. And then it's not that I don't go out or I don't go uh, meeting people, going for garden visits or so far. So I still live my normal life. It's just that I choose certain part of the time is really my own time, my own me time. Whether I contemplate in the forest, or whether I witness the forest, or just doing nothing and sitting, being quiet in silence. For me, it's really in silence. Listening to myself, going inward into myself, and going outer as well to the forest that I'm here now. So that is my semi-hermit life actually. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so in that sense, in terms of a physical setting, um, because I was invited to start a retreat center uh, for a diocese 4 years ago. So that meant that what I had is, even though my contract ended 2 years ago, I still had access to the grounds because I stayed on as a volunteer, meaning if people wanted to see me for spiritual direction, or the people that I train, if they wanted to come back to see me for supervision, I was available to them as a volunteer. So the blessing, or the gift that I received from that is that, you know I call myself a volunteer because, one, I'm not on contract with them. They don't pay me a salary. I'm doing it completely, out of willingness of my and openness of heart. Then, so in return, they have allowed me a bedroom, and their grounds are big. So even though it's within the property that belongs to a church, and even though that property is located within a small town, but that meant that I don't have immediate neighbors. I have lots of space between me and the next house.
Mm-hmm.
So, and even though it's a retreat center, but it's not always full. So that is part of how I can lead my hermit life. For one, because there's no internet and no neighbors. Um, it's more than, it's like what Elizabeth said. Our life is not monastic because we are free to go with the flow, to see how we want to live each day.
Mm-hmm.
If we want to spend time, whether it's in prayer, in contemplation, in meditation, that's fine. And then, because we both enjoy nature more, it might take the form of just sitting in nature. It might take the form of just walking in nature. Elizabeth is more of a gardener than I am. But the gift of having some grounds close to me is that even if I plant some things, maybe one or two vegetables, the gift of having maybe one plant was given by someone else, or that, I discovered that if we allow nature just take its toll, we might be surprised by unexpected presence. For example, one of the vegetable that I regularly eat actually grew wild by itself. Um, and so things like this, I think that, having hermit life, what does that mean? It's saying that, we some of us might desire more me time than others. But what do we do with this time? We are filling it up with not just work, but also things that we love to do. And mainly, I think it's also being very faithful. And I use the word faithful rather than discipline, because I feel that, for example, if we make something a practice and we feel that we must be disciplined in doing it, it feels regimented to me.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the word faithfulness is saying that if you love someone so much, be it, truly self-love, or truly love for the divine, for God, however you name your divine. And so faithfulness means that this is how I desire to spend time with the divine, time for me and time for doing things together with the divine. And some perhaps artists over the ages are better able to name this is saying that, you know, they have lots more time to open themselves to being inspired to paint, to draw, to write, or even artists like Elizabeth who gardens and then just and I know that, for example, hearing Elizabeth's shift, part of the shift was that, you know, perhaps in the past, maybe she might be more inclined to plan her garden, but
Yeah.
having moved here, she's
Yes.
allowed the flow of, you know, just let nature decide what nature wants to grow. And I think that's, for me, I thought it was a very significant shift in her.
Mhm.
It's also because I've always preferred the wilder type of nature. I always said that I don't really like manicured garden. So it's interesting to see how she has shifted that way. And I remember that. But yes, that's kind of why, you know, I feel that maybe artists throughout the ages are more able to name this, because they have always felt the need to spend time alone, whether to paint or whether to write. But I think that, you know, there is the artistic side in all of us.
Yes.
And sometimes I also think that it's about, you know, even if you don't feel called to living a hermit life where sometimes people might think that we're a bit more antisocial, um, it's also okay, because I think that it's like what Elizabeth said. I have found that if I have enough quality time with myself, with the divine,
Mm.
when I do spend time with social, with company, I I have more energy to be present to
Mhm.
them.
Mhm.
And of course, we are chatty to the people we love.
Mm.
We are, you know, we are, we might, being semi-hermit may also say being, you know, semi-introvert, meaning that, you know, there is a big chunk of introvertness in us, but there's also that side of us that we are still human, and I
Yeah.
think that social company is only healthy.
Yes.
So hence it's about how we make that time. For example, in the town, I might go see people maybe once or twice a week at most, but I, even if it's a busy work week, I need to block out at least 2 days just to be by myself, home alone. That's my way of being semi-hermit. But the reality is that majority of the time I am actually alone. For example, I have mentioned just now that, you know, I do go to big cities to lead workshops, to
Mhm.
train, to do coaching, to do spiritual direction. But that is only about once every quarter. I might take a month away, where a whole month is spent in the city, and and then for the next 2 or 3 months, I am back in my hermit life, and that's how I draw the balance that I need. I think sometimes, even if you don't feel inclined to, say, join our uh, hermit life, maybe it's too extreme for a lot of people. I think that it's I found it to be fascinating that a lot of people who live in cities, um, I wonder if the word is fearful.
Mm.
Um, Maybe, you know, if not fearful, then maybe just reluctant, or find it very difficult to consider moving into a smaller city, moving into the rural side. Um, and and despite, you know, the struggles of being in a city life, the stress, the traffic, the noise, the pollution, and sometimes just the increasing high cost of living that's making it really challenging for some people to live a financially viable, feasible life in the city, and yet they they struggle, or they are reluctant to consider moving to a smaller town, for example. And I think I find that fascinating, because I think that the thing that strikes me the most in conversations with some of my clients or directees is the word that they use is they have no choice.
Mm.
And I find that to be a very self-inflicting cage, because we always have choices. So people might say, oh, you know, that will bring them really far away from family, from friends. So I think that it's important to consider what are what we are capable of. For example, you don't have to move straight from a city to the countryside. Perhaps you could move to an hour away outside the city, and perhaps that would, for example, cut your expenses down.
Mhm.
I think that if you speak to a lot of people who have made choices like that, I know that, for example, my friend, she lives about 2 hours outside of London, and it is actually a village. Um, I don't even live in the village myself, so she has moved to a village. In the beginning, perhaps she was still, you know, finding the balance of working from home and going into London for work. And then later on, maybe a year or two later, it was about maybe getting a job halfway between London and home, etc. It's all, and then maybe later on she might find that if possible, she might want the next job to be fully working from home, and that might lead that might last for a year or two. Not so much that she doesn't want it anymore, but sometimes we change jobs in life, and maybe the following job is not as flexible. It's always making these adjustments, and it's always seeing how you can fit it in. And this friend of mine who's moved to the village, one, she's not at all semi-hermit. She has a full-on life because she's got to work in the city. She's now got two children, and it's balancing that. Perhaps she might take a longer time off, maybe for for a few more months, or maybe a year away from work while taking care of the two children. But then, there are times when she's also prepared to go back to the workforce if need be.
Mhm.
And I think that's what it's about, is taking the courage to perhaps once a year, if not more than that, right? At
Yes.
least once a year,
Mhm.
take hold and look at what it is that we really need at this point in our
Mhm.
life.
Mhm. Mhm.
For example, in the social sense, many years ago, I have already noticed this. I have noticed that a lot of times my own friends, they only meet up when I come back to the city. They rarely see each other during the rest of the year. Everyone's just caught up with the busyness of life. So in a way, I've actually found that to be interesting for myself. It's freed me to also make that the choice of moving away, and know that I won't be actually that much cut off from my friends, because I might end up seeing them more than the people who live in the same city. And also, again, because of, you know we have mobile phones or cell phones, we've got the internet these days. It's so much easier to keep in touch that, again, perhaps we might end up talking to our family more than when we live
Mhm.
one,
Yes.
down the road.
Mm.
Because a lot of times, I think, truly distance makes the heart grow fonder. So
Mhm. Mhm.
I think that we actually are more mindful about
Mhm.
keeping quality moments
Yes.
with our family.
Mhm.
Yeah, like a friend said that, she FaceTime her grandchild a lot more now that they live in different countries. I think this is true, and I think this is what's made it such a precious gift for at least some of us today to live this semi-hermit life. So
Mhm.
yeah, so what about you, Elizabeth? What are the other, very practical and very down to earth gifts that you've seen in your life? Whether it's social, or whether it's about, quality time with yourself and with God.
I will start with what Nita shared about because I live in Netherlands and my family are in Singapore. Now I moved to Groningen, and then my in-laws are not in Skidam. So I really do agree that when you really do meet, it is that for me, especially when I go back to Singapore, the time that I spend with my family, my siblings, my parents is very precious. It's very I where I can remember I live with my parents, and then so everyone is like busy with their own things, and then my mom always complain and say, "Wow, you treat the home like hotel, huh? I don't see you at all." I had a very busy social life, church ministry and so forth. So yeah, it's true. Most of the time I'm back, it's like I'm going home for sleeping. But when I moved away and when I come home, even though I come back for work, it's to come uh, fam- to have time with my family and also to work in the past 7 years. But each time, I really value that quality time and the time that we share, the time we laugh together, the time we joke, it's very precious. And those memories are so precious. It's very different. Yeah, like Nita says, absence makes a heart go founder. It's the same with Yerun also because Yerun has to go off to work. I don't see him for two days, and he goes back to Shkidam, and I'm all alone here. I don't feel lonely. That is one of the uh, theme that I have come to address, and especially after the contemplation, and I know that I'm always never alone. That especially living in the forest, even never alone. I have all the birds, the butterflies, and so forth and so forth. It's very interesting. Yerun also came to understand that the difference between loneliness and aloneness, because he actually drew a card called aloneness for this week. So loneliness is when the desire to feel the emptiness in us, the need to feel uh, whether it is someone or sometimes we keep ourselves so busy. I even asked my mentee once, even challenged my husband when I say, why are you keeping yourself so busy? Are you trying to fill up the emptiness, or are you trying to run away from something? Because I was like that. I kept myself very busy. But because I had done a silent retreat, I know what it is like when you're in silence. Everything just boom. Shoo. So when Yerun actually tasted silent retreats in the Abbey, then gradually he became going inward and listened more and more and more. So he really looked forward very much coming back here. At times I'll share conversation with him and say, hey, how do you feel moving from Skidam to here? He said, yeah. I asked him, are you happy? Are you enjoying your life here? Yes, yes, of course. So I really see the shift in him, and he he used to be very busy. He said, I will never be bored because he has full of things to do. Then I say, well, but now he can actually take walks in the forest by himself alone. We have even though we are married, actually in a way I realized that we also living kind of semi-hermit life, whereby we may be married, but we are never always glued together, doing things together, stick together. No, we gave. I always believe in giving quality me time also for myself and for my husband. So my husband will have his own time doing his own things, and I have my own time doing my own things. Let's say, for example, okay, I'll say, all right, go and do your stuff. I will go into the kitchen and prepare the dinner. So I will just go on with my doing things that I really enjoy. Sometimes we do come together and do things together, like cooking together or working on a plot together, or so forth and so forth. But often we have a very balanced me time even when we are together, and couple times together. So I find is as a married couple, as well as people with children as well. Because often I also will work with mothers, with parents. I always encourage them, go and have your own me time, and also have your own couple time. Time away from the children. Um, like Nita shared, it's very very true. When we are nourished, the me time is not. I will ask, what is really loving me time for yourself? Because sometimes me time can also end up becoming doing so many things that we get so tired, drained out, fatigued, and so forth and so forth, and then we are not nourished. So actually, when I go deeper into my own process and journey, and recently I come to see that what is really, what is truly balanced, loving self care. What is truly loving, balanced me time, and like Nita says, for me, I also encourage my husband. It's so crucial sometimes, especially when you come. No matter how when you work, there is always deadlines. There's always stress. There's always pressure. Because every time I ask my husband, so how's work? Oh, perfect, wonderful, da da da. But I used to be a therapist, and I pick up body clues, and I can sense that pressure, I can sense the stress, and I can sense his tiredness and so forth and so forth. But he doesn't tune in that, but he is more now. So it hit me to come to realize you may be very passionate about your work, you may love your job, so crazy over it, but yet um, there is stress, cannot be denied. There is conflict in the work setting that you cannot deny. There is pressure for you to finish something. So it's so important to take time out, whether to do nothing or whether just to rest. Like, in the forest, I see birds really taking time off. Some bathing in the sun when the sun is out, really enjoying in silence, in stillness, just ah. I literally see the bird just ah. And Nita ever shared also. An ant on a leaf, also sunbathing. I remember Nita that. And I
No,
see
that was my own inspiration.
okay.
So it's actually what I painted. It's not something I saw. No, no,
Okay.
that was my own inspiration
Yeah.
that I drew in my own 30-day retreat.
Okay. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So I do see bees taking break in between. And then, when I talk about, actually, the bees was the one who showed me about, you can be so crazy and passionate about your work. Oh, I go drive, drive, drive. That is what happened to the bees. The Linda plant, the Linda tree that was here is overwhelmed with fragrance. The bee really go frenetic crazy. Not just the bees, but all sorts of insects. This one I have not written about it, I'm not shared.
Mm.
But what I observed is a lot of bees died.
Mm.
They died because of exhaustion.
Mm.
You can see the difference because I have been observing bees in my garden, different flowers, how they go about collecting nectar, and then they rest, and then so forth and so forth. So, but I don't know what is this. I can say that this Linda is has a very strong fragrance, and I see it attracts lots of a different kind of variety insect butterfly. I think it's just a fragrance itself, and the bee, you can see it's like so. It just hit me right away, and I asked myself, oh my god, yes, we can be so crazy over whether you are so passionate about something, a cause or a work or whatever, but sometimes we forget to rest, we forgot to take time off, we forget to take the pause. And I think we have read of news where people died of exhaustion due to work. So this B lessons really hit me about life per se. Lessons say that we may be so crazy, but remember to take time off, to take time just to do nothing, just to rest. It's just like a reminder to every one of us, including myself, because I can be very passionate as well. When I first came here, I was really working very hard in the garden, and I just work, 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 work until my hand was so painful and I had to stop. My body is telling me, you abusing your own body. You are overworking. So it was so painful that I just had to stop. And it's a reminder to me again, self-care. It's that transition because from my in-laws, we've been trying to clear the house, selling the house or our own house, clearing my father-in-law house. There was this energy, this constant of non-stop working. I had to declutter when I come here. But it was in me that when I came here, I also went on that non-stop, and until my body tells me, hey, you are abusing your body, I'm abusing my own body. That's how the pain came and so forth and so forth. That hit me again. Oh my God, what am I doing to myself again? I'm not loving to myself. So I really stopped. And that is when the shift came. And the forest really brought me to a much more common place, a much more balanced place, reminding me again and again. It's like all these little lessons that I have been witnessing about the creatures, whether it's the birds, bees, and so forth, reminded me, hey, Elizabeth, what is going on with your life? Where is your me time? What is loving yourself? What is a balance, a self-care? So all these, that's why I invite Nita to have this conversation about semi-hermit life. Like she says, it is not a kind of life that may be drawn to you, but we're not calling you to live a semi-hermit life. No, this is our choice, Nita's choice, my choice. But our semi-hermit life is very different. But what works for you? Whether you live in a city, you have a full-time job, you have a family to take care of. But what I come to realize and see, it is so crucial to take time off, whether just to take a walk in the park or just to do nothing, just to sleep in, just to rest. Do we take the pockets? Because when we don't, I was a teacher, all the teachers that we know, we work until when it hit school holiday, our body just broke down, and we had a very big blown of sicknesses, illnesses just hit us because we have been holding until when we really have the opportunity to rest, boom, we are very, very sick. My mother can testify that. She always say, my God, every time you have holiday, you will be ill. So, what we are saying is that sharing this conversation about semi-hermit life is that to have a balanced life, even though you have family, you have um, very busy work life, like Nita says, um, take time off, perhaps a year. It's about tuning into yourself. What is your body saying? What is your need? And yeah, and I have to say that ever since I came here, I'm surprised that I was healed from allergy. I'm actually healed from a fruit allergy. I no longer has a I no longer I mean partly the reason I think I took raw milk. Part of the reason also rest and so forth. I actually don't get allergy anymore from cherries, apples, pears, which is so interesting because um, they are my favorite fruits. But at the moment I eat, I really get itchiness and allergy. But the cherry was the first. I love cherries, and the first. Hey, I don't get itchy anymore, because it's really big breakup. Very, 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 very terrible. So I do believe that, I have gone through this journey with Nita. I really feel that when we really love ourselves in the whole aspect, mind, body, soul, everything, we really took, if we have a balanced, holistic way of living, actually, and we can heal. It's not going frenetic about eating so overly consciously healthy, it's not one direction. It's really a wholesome, a very holistic, wholesome way of living. And I can testify that because it happens to me. Even happened to Jeroen also. We do see a shift in our whole being, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, bodily. When we just listen, when we really need to take time off and rest, we rest. So with this conversation, we really hope that encourage, inspire, and motivate you to look into your own personal life. Um, what is actually balanced life for you, and yeah, taking time off for me time, whether to discern, um, because I took time, Vinita, in contemplation, in retreats to discern about my own personal life. That is where it is. Yeah.
So we'll take a break
Yes.
with this, and then after this, we'll talk about what Elizabeth just mentioned. Like she took a retreat with me. We'll talk about how we got to where we are today, what made us come to live this semi-hermit life, and we'll also talk more about some of the benefits or gifts that has enriched our life since we've made this change. And so stay tuned, and we'll be back soon.
We'll be back.
So now we're going to be talking about how we get to be living this semi-hermit life, as well as some of the gifts that have enriched our lives. And some of these gifts, to be honest, I think we will only talk about the ones that have come unexpectedly, because I think that a lot of times in life, there's nothing we can plan. And to be honest, I think that it, the reason we are talking about these two together, how we come to be living this life and the gifts, it's because I think that in a huge part, the gifts played a huge role in affirming or confirming this lifestyle decision. I think that a lot of times we only take one step, and while there are doubts, that the gifts are the what confirm for us that this is how we want to live this life. But the start of it all, to begin, I think it starts with perhaps some of our dreams when we were young. And I'll go back to my own childhood.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was a teenager, yeah, ever since I was a teenager living in the UK, I would I love going to the canals. And even though there are not as many canals in the UK as the Netherlands, but there are canals and there are boat houses. It's always fascinated me, these boat houses, and it was like a fantasy or a dream, a daydream at least, to imagine myself living in a boathouse. And I don't know, as a teenager, I don't think we went into really asking the questions about why we're so fascinated about it. And I think that as a teenager, I probably would have seen myself as a fairly practical person. Um, Practical in the sense that, my thoughts about my future then was to go get a good job, ideally, maybe perhaps in a big corporation or something, and then earn lots of money and all that, right? But yeah, so at the same time, every time I walk past these canals and see these boat houses, I would be so fascinated with them. And then later on, as an adult, um, as Elizabeth said, perhaps this call to my true self, at least. Perhaps it started with the fact that what we might call, well, traditionally it was called silent retreats,
Mm.
and so a friend signed up for four of us to go for a weekend retreat, and he didn't tell us any details. And this is back in 2004, so it's also the first time such. And that time I was living in Malaysia. It was the first time that a retreat like this opened up in Malaysia. So yes, he didn't tell us anything about it. He just and and after signing up for the four of us to go, he had to work that weekend, so he didn't go. I don't think he ever got his refund too, but whatever. He didn't turn up, and then the other two friends. So there are three of us who are childhood friends, and then one of them was bringing his girlfriend. So the three of us went, and being friends, obviously we just thought it's like a weekend away, that kind of thing, just spending time with friends, chatting and all. And then on Friday evening after dinner, they introduced us to the retreat, and that's when we found out that it's at that time they still use that traditional term, silent retreat. So you can imagine, jaw droppings that, like, literally you can't talk to each other. So and it was being a bit traditional. It was very I think very Catholic, or very
Mm.
Ignatian,
Mhm,
in the
mhm,
sense that you were given inputs, and then but the gift was that you were given a lot of free time to go and pray.
mm,
So here's what happened. Every time, I was already doing yoga at that time. So doing yoga, I've learned meditation. So every time that I was supposed to pray, I would actually sometimes sit cross-legged doing meditation, or other times lie down in shavasana or cord pose to do those
mm,
contemplation. And obviously there were times that I dozed off. So it was interesting. Every time that I'm supposed to be more serious about prayer, maybe I fell asleep.
mm.
But but that was actually how I fell in love
Yes,
with
yes,
this
yes.
retreat. I fell in love with it because up to that point in my life, and I was working in the corporate then, in, um, it was the most restful weekend up to that point in my life. I've never had a more restful weekend. I
Mhm,
think that, the awareness was that even at times that we have busy corporate lives, and
mhm,
there are times that we think we take a break and go
mhm,
away.
mhm, mhm.
Um, Holidays or vacations might end up being more stressful
Yeah.
than work
Mhm,
itself, and not very restful,
mhm,
often maybe
mhm,
more tired after you fly home. So yes, it was just amazing that it was so restful. And that sense of, like, literally, I think I used the term I fell in love with it one. It's like that the thought entered my head that, hey, perhaps maybe one day I'll do this kind of work. Or that, I even imagine like giving the gift of such weekend to people that I love. Like, oh, it'd be wonderful if we
Mm.
give the gift of a retreat to friends and family. And so I did, like, just saying that, I often say that be careful what you say, even if no one else heard it. Maybe God heard it, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, 2 years down the road, I find myself drawn to leading retreats. What happened since that retreat was that I started training as a yoga teacher, and in the beginning, I was still in the corporate world, maybe teaching yoga part time,
Mhm.
and then I left corporate world full time to become a yoga teacher. And perhaps as a yoga teacher, I found myself interestingly, within a year, I got very busy again. Like,
Mm.
um, I had at the end of after teaching full time for 1 year.
Mm.
Well, I mean, it started very slow. In the beginning, I had to prep talk myself and encourage myself and say that, if I only gain one class per month, that's good progress. But yet, at the end of the year, I had more than 15 classes, and because my classes were either in, so I wanted to reach out to people. I think
Mm.
that's always been a part of me. I believe in reaching out to people. So,
Mhm.
for example, when people can't come to you, how can we bring this to them? So, for
Yeah.
example, I would be teaching in offices, in corporate offices, like or lunchtime yoga, or after work, or in private homes, so that people could do it in the comfort of their homes. Malaysia, I was still in Malaysia at part of that time, not all of that time, but part of that time. um, and Malaysia is a Muslim country, so there are times that might be not as comfortable for Muslim women to be practicing yoga outside their homes because of their hijabs and everything. But in the comfort of their home, and we're all women, so there is that sense of comfort, privacy, and openness.
Mhm.
So I found it to be a huge blessing that was welcomed into people's homes too. So with that, I found that, like I said, at the end of 1 year, I already had 15 classes. Um, the traffic, just like most major cities, the traffic is crazy. 15 classes may mean that, it can take sometimes an hour to drive from one class to the other. So it may mean that I'm working at least 30 hours per week to
Mm.
what 40 hours per week, because even after classes there might be jam again. It just felt like it was not worth it again. It was like I'm no less busy than when I was in the corporate world. So it was also I felt more and more drawn into um, perhaps going into retreats. And being a yoga teacher, I just very practically thought that, oh, maybe I would
Mhm.
train to lead yoga retreats. Um, but long story short was how things happened, and for the first time in my life, I followed inspiration,
Mm.
pure inspiration that, in my opinion, was, like I said, for a very practical person, it just felt very airy fairy. Um, and again, I went to seek um, advice from spiritual directors, two who, without consulting each other, affirmed the decision to, oh, I think you should, my inspiration or whatever was to go to New York to train.
Mm.
And Malaysia, it's only 3.5 hours from India. It makes a lot more sense to go to India to train to lead yoga retreats.
Mm.
It's so much cheaper
Mm.
than Manhattan,
Mhm.
New York.
Mhm.
So yet, based on pure inspiration, I went, and somehow I managed financially, logistically, everything fell into place. Again, without going into details, uh, I have a relative there, but we haven't seen each other for years, and yet they were so generous in welcoming me into my home. And my teacher was very, very open. Like, it started with very empowering too. Like, the first 2 months I was his student, and then the third month onwards I was his assistant teacher when he led retreats, and by the fifth month he connected me with some of his contacts, so that I was leading sessions on my own already, whether it's weekly sessions or monthly retreats. But I felt that, in and while I love my time in the US, I felt that lots of people in the US do what I do. Perhaps it's good to bring it back to my home country or home continent, Asia, where I thought, like, this would be brand new and this didn't exist in Asia. Um, let's just say it wasn't a very bright idea. It was out of a good heart, but people were just not ready in Asia back in. That was already 2006, 2007. I came back to Asia in 2007. It was really challenging. People were not ready, whether they were okay with yoga just as yoga classes for an exercise, but whether it was from and then retreats were very bound within the religious realm, that it had to be about religion. And if you were Christian, you couldn't bring it into a Buddhist retreat center, and vice versa. The lines were very drawn. And that was not something that I was used to personally, and it was not something I believed in. Yeah, society was a bit more boxed in at that time. And corporates were not yet into retreats in Asia back in 2007. So again, thanks to my teacher in New York, he connected me with a retreat center in Canada. So since 2009, I lived and worked full-time in retreat centers. After Canada, I also worked in the UK, and finally again back in Hong Kong, back in Asia, and that was in Hong Kong in 2012. So yes, after leaving the corporate world, and after leaving, full-time job as a yoga teacher as well, I became full-time in retreats, from groups to small groups to individuals. So I've spent a lot of that time. While the retreat centers were mostly in rural setting, we were really surrounded by people. Like, I live in the retreat center, but I'm not the only one there. There are other, some of my other co-workers live into. So it's a maybe closer to the monastic life. I used to say it was semi-monastic because, yeah, you live in community, and all the challenges and the gifts of living in community. But what it did throughout those years was that it made me realize that actually I've always had an introverted side to me, that perhaps as a child, living brought up by more social parents, there was a lot of, like, cultural norms that, out of politeness, for example, if anyone came to your home, even if you were a child, it's very rude to not come out to greet your guests. Any guest that visited your home, you would have to serve food, serve drinks, and sit with them to socialize a bit, chit chat and all that. Even if you were a child, you're not allowed to. If you had homework, you could stay and chat for a shorter amount of time before excusing yourself to go do your homework. But you weren't, out of politeness, you weren't allowed to just say that, hello, and then bye, I'm going back into my room. That was not allowed. So there was a lot of times that you didn't realize it then, because you were children, and this is such a cultural norm that like I said, I think, to a certain extent, we were forced to be more extroverted than I really were. So those years, from the corporate world to yoga to the retreat centers, it gave me space. And of course, the nature of the work being mind, body, and spirit, about self-care, self-nourishment, spirituality. it was a lot about exploring who we are, what's our true self, and what do we really desire. So it brought out, obviously also doing personality tests like MBTI, etc., that helped me realize that actually I'm about 50-50 extrovert, 50% introvert, and perhaps a bit higher on the introvert side. But other than that, it's your life went on, even though I live in a retreat center. It's all these very subtle things that happen, I think, underneath the surface. The other thing that also was obvious was that, remember I said about my teenage dream of, looking at boat houses and fantasize that um, as an adult, perhaps it would look like, if I ever retired, my retirement life would look like perhaps getting my own place, or perhaps living in a camper van or something as an artist, and perhaps selling my art as an artist, because I'm also an artist, and then making ends meet, and through that. And that was my other type of fantasy, that that you could just make ends meet by selling art, but the rest of the time you get to spend so much time in nature looking at these gorgeous scenery, but more importantly that the freedom of just being with yourself and with your art. And I think these, again, that's why I say they were all taking place underneath the surface. That they came out as maybe fantasies, as maybe self-awareness, but it was kind of like, perhaps that's what happens in the forest. All these things that happen underneath the earth becomes nourishment for that seed to grow into a tree, right? So likewise, my final retreat center, and I use the word final because that was my last full-time job in a retreat center, was actually back in Malaysia after, like I said, Hong Kong, US, UK, Canada. I'm finally back in Malaysia, and it was very unexpected. Because I was visiting family, I was supposed to move on to a retreat center in Australia. And at the very last minute, things didn't work out. Work permits and all that stuff. So things didn't work out, and I didn't end up working in Australia. So came back to Malaysia, visited friends and family, and on a visit to Penang, met the Catholic Bishop of Penang, and he invited me to come start a retreat and spirituality ministry for his diocese, meaning area. And his area consists of about 5 states in the northern part of Malaysia. So he cares for 5 states, meaning the Catholic churches in 5 states of Malaysia. So this was for the north of Malaysia. And I'm not originally from this part of the country. My parents live in Kuala Lumpur, which is in the central area. So it's a brand new place. I have no friends and family there. And to be honest, it was very interesting. I very early on, I felt that I should just go check out the expatriate communities, because having come back from so many years abroad, I think I would, like I said, I lived abroad since I was 17. So it just felt like I didn't know. I look local, I speak local languages, but it was a bit hard to make friends. So it was okay. And then the work was interesting and challenging, because again, I think like the first time I came back to Malaysia back in 2007, trying to bring trying to bring retreat back. It's the same thing. It's introducing something that's totally brand new. It's all about educating people first before we can even begin the work or to lead retreats. It was a very challenging 2 years. But what it meant was that for the first time, I had absolute authority about what kind of programs I want to lead. I also started my own training program, and then after the training, I started, supervision programs for the people who've come through my training course, and then wonderful people like Elizabeth and others who came to do retreats from 2 days to 1 week to 30-day retreats, whether it's lifting or whether it was through Zoom or through Skype, through video calls. I believe in the hybrid of, not everyone can take so much time off work to come and live. So if people could make time to come and stay in for, say, even for the 30-day retreat, if people, it can be done over 18 months or even 2 years. If people could make time to come and stay for 8 days in the beginning and 8 days in the end, everything else in between we can do it through Skype, through video calls, etc. So having come here, and at the end of 2 years, it felt like, other than studying the training program and the supervision program, in terms of retreat and really introducing spirituality to the region, it didn't feel like I did much. It didn't feel like we really achieve our goals and aim. And from a very personal point of view, I really did not understand why the hell I was here. Because, it was a challenging place, and well, personally for myself. But now, 2 years, this is 2 years on since then. In the last 2 years, for whatever reason, the inspiration was to just stay on and not leave. And I think that was part of the blessing. I think that I finally, for myself, could open myself to the magic of the place, because the property that I was given is known for miracles. People come and pray, and their wishes are mostly granted. Whether, people who, for example, a couple of doctors, being medical profession themselves, they've been married for about 9 years, and they came and they couldn't conceive. So when they came to this place and they prayed, they finally conceived their first child. And many, many, many people have told me similar stories. People who prayed for a job, their prayers were answered, etc., etc., etc. So 500,000 people come to this church property every year, because I think human beings, we need miracles in our lives. So having lived in this place, you can't help but just see it keeps happening before your eyes. You can't help but believing. So but this inspiration was not to leave. The first year after the contract, I stayed on to volunteer as supervisor for all my trainees. And actually that year, a lot of people I knew, a lot of loved ones passed away. Like every 3 weeks, someone I knew passed on. That was 2017. All the way till the 31st of December, I felt like, until the year ended, someone might be saying goodbye. And it was also the year that I think that, death became the theme. Death in the sense that my contract ended, but also at the same time, prior to that, I was also on the board of directors for Spiritual Directors International, which is an organization, kind of like, where counselors and all that, you've got your own union or associations. Well, this is the one for like spiritual coaches or spiritual directors. And I was on the board of directors, actually. So I resigned from it also in 2017. Due to health or due to the theme of death. I also cancelled some invites to become guest teachers for other people's training programs in other countries as well as in Malaysia. It was a time that I just felt like, if death was the theme, then let everything that needed to die, let it die. So yes, I benefited from that property, which is actually called St. Anne's. That I felt like, actually there were times that I was a full hermit, not just semi-hermit, but full-on hermit, where for the whole calendar month, for example, I never left home. I was just indoors. I didn't even go out to walk. Perhaps once a week, I might just go out if I needed groceries. Only if, and less than, and the rest of the month, for that 30 days, I was just indoor. And like I said, maybe things that needed to die, I just needed to give space for it to die.
Mhm.
I was not asking for anything specific. I
Mhm.
was not praying for anything specific.
Mhm.
And at the end of that month, when I kind of like check about, with my own awareness of who I am and how am I today,
Mm.
I just felt like in that 4 weeks, you know, I felt healed of like 4 decades of
Mhm.
stuff. No awareness of what it was.
Yeah.
Physically, I felt healthier,
Yeah.
fitter without exercising for a whole month.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah, everything like that. And I think that was the start. It was also the first month after the end of my contract. Well, the first month I actually volunteered for some work. So the
Mm.
second month, that's all I did. And then, like I said, the rest of the year until 31st of December
Mm.
was just let go and let die.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, and I thought maybe by January 2018 I would be ready for new work, a new job perhaps, but nothing came. So it was
Mhm.
almost like, it felt like I received the unexpected gift of a sabbatical year because nothing happened until June
Mm.
2018, which is exactly a year since my contract ended. My contract ended June 2017. So that was the month that I was in Europe, leading retreats for Elizabeth,
Mhm.
for Euron and others, but also, yeah, until that month in Europe, I haven't worked for a whole year. I think that, like I said, it was like, half that year was about dying, and perhaps the other year half was was giving space for spring to start.
Mhm.
Winter has ended, but spring was just starting.
Mm.
And I didn't really, really get into the swing of work, I think, till till September. But also, I think it's important to also state that part of the healing process was that in the dying, there
Mhm.
was actually new life.
Yeah.
That before, by December 2017, I had proposed to Elizabeth that we wanted to start our forest ministry, our forest, which is our online retreat center,
Mhm.
where we have retreat programs.
Mhm.
Everything is online, whether it's video, like the one that you're watching now,
Mhm.
it's emails, it's
Mhm.
ebooks, it's video calls for private consultations, whether it's coaching, whether it's spiritual direction, whether it's therapy,
Mhm.
everything. This all fell under this website that you have found,
Mhm.
but between ourselves, we always call it our forest,
Mhm.
and we want to embrace as fully as possible and as inclusive as possible
Mhm.
all the things that make an organic, natural, um, uh, native forest
Mhm.
possible.
Mhm.
So yes, so December was, I think, when we agreed to have it, and then we set the date to start on the 1st of January 2017.
Mhm.
So this was just literally, it was still a seed.
Mhm.
And I think we really, really, or I personally really began having online work from our forest, I think was only in October 2018. So it's like 10 months. 10 months after it was born. Well, not really. Well, I guess it took 10 months. That wasn't birth, I guess. But 10 months anyway. And even if we did say that we gave birth on the 1st of January, maybe it's 10 months of being an infant, right? Where it just had to
Mm.
sleep all the time.
Mhm.
So but it really, what changed was when um, I was invited to come and help myself to my neighbor's garden, the neighbor meaning the church.
Mm.
The church people started the garden, and they said that since I live on their property, I was welcome to help myself to their vegetables. Mm, I've said in the previous
Mm.
video that in the past I planted like 2 vegetables next to where I live,
Mm.
and there were two others that were, one was given by someone else and one grew. Wow. Well, now I'm invited to help myself to the church vegetables. garden.
Mhm.
It felt like, in Christian terms, manna from heaven. This is
Yeah.
like a free gift every single day that I can just go and pluck from. So everything actually, interestingly, changed for
Mhm.
me
Mhm.
through the physical act of harvesting the veggie myself, cooking, and then eating it. And literally that day, after consuming that vegetable, something in me changed to say that let's just stay on, because I thought I was so ready to leave.
Mm.
I was making plans, at least in my head, to move to another town to really focus on what our forest that is also, part of it. I would say that in secular terms, it's our business as well.
Mm.
But yet, having eaten that vegetable, like I say, something changed. I can't even intellectually name what it is, but I decided, okay, I'm just gonna stay. I'll just continue to volunteer my services as and when it's needed, and in return, I get a free room, and then I help myself to the vegetables from the garden, as well as my own, um, and that sense of learning, um, learning to receive gift. I spoke to a friend in Australia and she helped because I felt like, if I'm not working for them anymore, is it right to continue to stay in that bedroom that they provided, for example? But my friend in Australia reminded me that you've on the one hand you've paid your dues, but secondly, you're still actually doing work for them. It's just that
Mm.
you chose not to have financial remuneration. Instead, you've asked for accommodation, and that too is fair exchange for work. Um, the vegetable is pure gift. Learn to receive it,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
again, from a spiritual or divine point of view, if the universe, if God wants to give you free accommodation, why do you want to turn it away from it? Why
Mm.
do you want to say no to the gifts?
Mhm.
So that sense of what I would say now is that since
Mm.
November last year, and we are now in July,
Mm.
the lesson for me is learning to accept miracles
Mhm.
for myself and
Mhm.
learning to accept gifts for myself. And
Mm.
what are miracles in my life now? I use the word miracles, but to me, they are interchangeable with gifts, meaning that I didn't plant the vegetable next
Mm.
door,
Mm.
but I get to draw from them
Mm.
thanks to the generosity of others.
Mm.
The other miracles is that I've since then I've been inspired to try out lots of traditional recipes,
Mm.
including making Chinese red wine,
Mm.
and the red wine for Chinese it's used not just for drinking, but it's also for cooking. So we can stir fry with it, we can cook soup with it, and I bought like 1 kg of sticky rice for that, and like for example the cost is about like let's say less than £3, and maybe about $3. uh, and I've been able to share it,
Mhm.
like maybe cook and share it with about 15 people. And that's just crazy, in my opinion. It's just such abundance, generosity. Personally, I feel that if I made food, I'd rather share it with others.
Mhm.
I don't see myself as a very good salesperson, so
Mhm.
I wouldn't be making and selling that wine, for example. And it's a personal
Yeah,
choice.
it is.
But unexpectedly,
Mhm.
having not planned anything at all,
Mm.
um, in return, people have given me their food that they've cooked. And these unexpected gifts have enriched my life. So much so that with the vegetable, with food that I receive from others, other than buying the basic ingredients like rice, for example, if I
Mhm.
turn vegetarian, for example,
Mhm.
I can have free food every single day for the rest of the time that I live on this property. And and that was interesting. That led to the next level of gift. I now use the word next level because it brought me to a deeper,
Mm.
innate programming that because I was born and bred in a city.
Mm.
I think that that inner programming
Mm-hmm.
within stated that we needed to pay money to get something in return, that
Mm.
nothing was free in life,
Mm-hmm.
that we always have to pay for something. So
Mm.
having this
Mm.
life where, like I said, if I turn vegetarian, I could practically live for free food, free accommodation. There is a spring, underground spring on the property, that if I choose not to use tap water, I have everlasting water from underground. Um, that yeah, that that yes, all these great things, all our basic needs can actually be free of charge, and they are gifts, sheer gifts. Do I say yes to receiving them and opening myself to embracing them, and to open myself to receiving more? And that has been, like I said, the lesson since November. And and it keeps increasing. It's not only never ending, it feels like it keeps increasing. And I don't think I need to step into a shopping mall at all for the next 5 years, I think. So that's both the journey of how I came here, and the unexpected gifts that really affirm and rooted my decision to become semi-hermit. Um, and and for as long as this is the invitation that I receive in my life, I have decided to embrace and say yes to living this
Mm.
way.
Mm-hmm.
Should one day something else happen and a new invitation comes, perhaps I'm invited to say go back into full-time work, perhaps even in another country, I would say yes, I'm definitely open to exploring the possibilities. But what will happen now, that I know for sure, is that I want to make sure that I bring in this semi-hermit living into whatever work I do next, meaning that it has to be more than half the time,
Mm.
that whatever work that I go into must allow more than half that time that I am able to work from home,
Mm-hmm.
that I am able to say, if I continue to live in my part-time hermitage, um, it, whatever work that I embrace should be able to help me continue living that 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 life, or
Mm-hmm.
to help me continue um, opening myself up to the gifts that life and God and the universe has been wanting to give me.
Mm.
um, because I guess, especially because in the work that I do, it's mostly about helping others. That if I don't first nourish myself,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what do I have to offer
Yes.
to the others that I journey with?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that's me and that's my story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Nita, for sharing your story. And well, looks like Nita is okay. She's back because it froze for a while.
Oh, no, no,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. I'm just being still. The screen freeze. I'm just being still because I just wanted to be present to you.
Mm.
but but I think it's interesting for you to point out, and I think it's interesting for people who might watch our video to know that, there are
Mm.
times that if you see either of us just
Mm.
kind of sitting still and staring into the screen,
Mm.
know that it's not because the screen froze. It's just that, yeah, it's part of the gifts that we've received from this life,
Mhm.
that is so rich that stillness has become a natural part of us.
Mhm.
So yes. So
Mhm.
when I don't speak, when it's not my turn to speak, I'm quite
Mhm.
happy to just be still. So thank you, Elizabeth, and definitely over to you. And don't worry, it's not freezing.
Well, do we want to continue for another
Yeah,
30?
sure. Why not? I think it
Okay.
will be good to just go into your story,
All
and
right.
then and then yeah, after your story, it's when we will say goodbye for this recording,
Yeah.
and then yeah, that's it.
My story for me is how I come to embrace, I think, first as a full time spiritual director or a holistic life coach. I think it becomes very very clear as we go back to our childhood memories, and it's not that I literally go back. It's just like when I sit in silence, when I sit in contemplations, and it just um, come back to me, and that sense of revisiting um, my childhood memories, and it's not about going back into the past. It's just that it just flow when that awareness, this self awareness, and what has actually happened to me as a little girl. Um, when a sense of memory came back to me, my whole being is filled with gratitude, really gratitude, because I've gone through really a very hard time as a child, during my childhood, growing up in many ways. So, but now when I go actually entering into my memories, it's actually beautiful, fond memories. It goes to say that I am healed. I'm healed of my traumas, of my past, and so forth and so forth. And I find these days whenever um, that the past of memories just come back, it's always full of beautiful fond memories and gratefulness. Um, and I see that my journey has already begun as I was a little girl. I'm very grateful to my paternal grandma who brought me to temple. That actually is very interesting. I was going through a very hard time, but yet that precious time that I had with the elderly in the temple, cleaning, washing temple, or washing dishes, and were the most precious time that I most memorable and precious time. That's why I'm not surprised that I had work with it. I naturally returned to work with the elderly, and advocating for them. So it was very interesting. It's not coincidence, but because of my encounter experiences with so many elderly that made me so comfortable. Even in my teenage years, also, I did volunteer work also with the elderly as well. It's a very natural flow. So it's a natural, um, very natural who I am, and the experiences and encounters that I had. So spirituality is already embodied and embraced when I was already very young. I didn't realize that then. Um, it's just I just know I'm very drawn to it. Don't know why. When I became a Catholic, also very drawn. When it yeah anything yeah in spirituality is like a when I step into it, it's very natural that I actually enter very deep into it. And then when I was in sacred dance ministry again, I naturally I didn't ask for the role. They just gave me the role as a spiritual director. So I became a spiritual director first, then as a leader in the ministry, in the sacred dance ministry, and also in the when I trained as a teacher. Again, gave me the role as a spiritual director also in the Catholic Apostolic group. So it didn't occur to me then. It's I don't know what they see in me, and it's just that naturally they just say, "Hey, would you like to take on this role?" And I actually led, um, yeah, in a way, spiritual directions using the Bible, with my group, with the teachers, and so forth and so forth. At that point in time, I I I I thought it's a very natural thing for me because I did a lot of Bible studies. When I became a Catholic at 21, I really dived into a Bible study, and I was very fascinated by it. So I guess somehow I don't know. This is a very when you want to talk about the whole being, spirit is the soul is very very prominent and very obvious and very strong for me. That's where I begin. So I think when it come a point when my soul calls me back again, to deep contemplation, um, I know it is a very natural thing for me to do. It's more of a saying yes to it. So I said yes, and and very naturally the flow, and when Nita invite me, to take on the role of to be trained as a spiritual director and so forth and so forth, is my true self. It's just very natural kind of going back actually to who I am. Yeah, and also leading me into this semi-hermit life. I think I have always been very drawn to. I don't think it's religious life. It's more of the contemplations, the yeah, like Nita as well. The same. I was in the children ministry, um, and then they actually planned a silent retreat, and I didn't even know it's a silent retreat. And when I didn't know, I said, "What? We cannot talk?" And I was only 21 years old, and I'm a extrovert. I'm also a chatterbox, so I'm like, "What? We cannot talk?" But that 3 days of encounter was something very unique and special. I don't know what is it. Maybe at that point of time, something touched me deep. It's probably is reconnecting to my inner soul. Connecting to my divine insight, to God within me. It's just something about it which I cannot explain or describe at the time. And it does draw me. And my friend, she was my sponsor when I was a cash human, and she encouraged me to go back, go back to doing silent retreat. And gradually, I do return in my 20s, especially time where I was so happy. I was a teacher, and it was so hectic. It was so was stressful, and the very first thing is I need time off. And I'll tell my mom, I'm booking myself into my silent retreat. Okay, I'm going silent retreat. And that was my restful time, really restful. And then I saw, yeah, I didn't know it was an initial spiritual exercise direction actually. So I had this wonderful priest, he always tells me, take 1 or 2 days and sleep. Don't worry, just rest. If your body says sleep, sleep. So that kind of permission to be able to rest and doing nothing. I literally slept the whole entire day, recuperating, nourishing myself, just resting. I would literally, I think I literally slept the whole day before I go on with the spiritual exercises like Nita has shared, very traditional kind of a silent retreat practices. So yeah, so I know where are my what helps me, what works for me. So I will book myself in, when I need time off, I just book myself into the silent retreat when I have holidays. So it's a very natural thing. Yeah, and it's very interesting that how I come into this life, semi-hermit life. Actually, it's not a coincidence or a sudden decision or suddenly pop. It has been, as Nita shared her story, I also get the memories of where it comes from. Actually, I live a very contented life as a young person. In my 20s, my 21, I was exploring art. I was doing art. I learned all kinds of art. I have a very carefree, free-spirited life, and I'm so contented with my life. Um, yeah, I just serve in church ministry. I just give tuition, freelance. It's literally my own time. I will balance with whatever things that I want to do, and it's literally my time. And I was very contented. A friend even commented, "You are so easily contented. Just give you art. That's it. I can just literally sit there, very focused, and every time I finish a piece, you see me radiating with joy, and all my friends who was with me then, can see. And I even dream of running an art studio at the time, become an art teacher, teaching art. And that was actually my dream. It was very interesting when Nita was sharing. Like, yeah, that was also happened to me. And as a little girl, also, I was also fascinated with nature. My grandma's has potted plants at the balcony, and biology is I'm very drawn to biology, but I never do well in it. I cannot remember things, but I'm just fascinated by the body, by the how the plants are, so forth and so forth. So that already, I'm very captivated by it. And plus that my school happens to be up in the hill, and there's a forest actually at the bottom. So being there for 10 years, in a kind of, I'm already in the nature. I was in the nature for immersing in it. So it's a very natural thing to return to. So yeah, so I grew my first chili plant in my grandma pot. I saw my maternal grandma great orchid. I was like, how did she grow that orchid just on charcoal? That kind of. I'm so fascinated. Wow, because her orchids are beautiful, gorgeous flowers blooming. So all these memories of childhood that stick with me, and stay with me. Growing my first chili, I was so I cut and I tell my mom, look, I grew my first chili. that joy. So it was very natural for me to return to who I truly am, back to the forest, back to gardening, back to spirituality, back to what I'm doing now. I ever asked my husband, I said, we have been married for 13 years, we knew each other for since 2005, and I say, did you see a shift in me, a change in me? He said, yeah, you're much happier, much happier. Um, so yeah, so it is really a gift because Yuri and I were talking about, uh, why I like to, I share about the garden, I share about the birds, I share about, because it's to bring a deep awareness of how interconnected we are with the nature, and also we brought us a very deep love for the nature. And then it's very interesting that when I share, because I don't reveal that actually we have a little forest in here, and we don't stay close to the nature. In fact, actually, we are in the nature. So a lot of them, when they perceive the garden, they thought that it's like a small little like a pot, and then we just being surrounded by the trees and so forth. But in reality, actually, we are literally in the nature. So it's not that close to nature, but actually but inside the nature. So very blessed. I have to say what Nita says. Unexpected is an unexpected gift. We know we want to live in a nature area. We took like more than a year of process, and Nita has also been journeying with us. And when this house was on sale, but it was not available. So we thought, okay, maybe this is not the house, and so forth and so forth. So we went on searching for houses over the past 1 year. But then again, somehow it's very interestingly how we are still being pulled back into to this house. And Anita says, um, it will just the gifts will just when we know and we are clear about what we want in life, we will be led to it, we'll be guided to it. And true enough, after a year, it's only when we are ready. Yurun is ready, I'm ready, the door opens. It is not, that's why I say it is not that we plan it, that we forced it, that we like, oh, this is the goal, we have to go for it. No. For the first time in our life, something just unfold in its own pace, unfold in its own time, not just for us, but also for the one who sells it. So, every time when we talk, when Yura and I talk about this place, we keep, especially when we beginning, we moved here, and we are so awed by what is going on, and we are so astonished. My God, this is actually not a very small place, huh? The garden itself, the forest is not small, but it's quite huge. It's overwhelming. And then we pinch ourselves. Is this real? Are we really? Are we really here? Um, yeah, it's very grateful. It's we have support. Like my father-in-law. At the time, he was already not very well. He just say, go and do what you really want, because he knew that I wanted a garden very, very much. But for you and I never thought of that we will own such a big um, place, with a little tiny mini forest, I call it. Um, yeah, where we're gifted, and then the more we stay here, we come to see a lot of gifts. My God, there's a hazelnut tree, there's a cherry tree, there's an apple tree, there's a pear tree, there's a linder tree. Oh my God, it's like, oh my God, it's like, wow, when we bought this place, we didn't even know that these are there, because we didn't even know they are there at all. It's only when we lived here, then we realized, oh my God, when they start blooming flowers, blooming fruits, and then we're like, and um, for the first time, I had so many chamomile flowers growing, because we allow the wild, to grow, the weeds to grow, to heal the soil, for the soil to recover. Oh my God, so many! Because I always dream of, a piece of the ground where there are lots of flowers growing. So I have many, many chamomile growing around, and such a joy. I just go and pick it and I cut it and so forth and so on. And the moment when I cut it, that contentment came to me. It's a gift. It's a gift of contentment. It's like, because my dream is, I love hanging dry flowers in a house, and then full of fragrance and smell. So that moment when I harvest it for that purpose, that contentment just arrived. I'm like, that contentment brings that joy, that gratitude. I'm like, wow, it's a to me it's a gift, because I have lived a very contented life at age 21, and I lost it. I lost that gift of contentment, because at the time I was really very contented with life. I am very free spirited, and when I went into the working world, I became a teacher. It was so stressful, and so I lost a lot of things. But that deep desire, that yearning, is there. It keep calling me, keep calling me, keep calling me, and very grateful that I have to be where I am today, to be where to be able to embrace this life, whether I call it semi-hermit, whether a contented life, a life which I can enjoy, doing things that I love, like gardening, cooking. I love cooking too. That because I have been so busy, really busy. Even my balcony garden, I told Jeroen, I neglected it for 2 years. I just had no time to attend to the just potted plants. I had no time, and for 2 years it was deserted. The moment when I step in, I say, "Oh my God, what happened to my balcony garden?" I was so busy. I didn't even have time to cook. Do like a play with ingredients. Recently I harvested so many of cherries. I could actually, it's like children playing with food. I'm like, peeling, taking out the cherry, and then make it. Is that is And then I get the cherry splatter on me. It was so fun. I thought, oh, I'm playing with my food. I'm playing with the cherry. Everything red. The simple pleasure of a joy, the simple pleasure of moment. So I can understand. In the past, I teach parents, let the children play the fruit, with their hands, the sensory. I'm doing that, and that it's so important. For me, it's lots of fun, lots of joy. It's not that kind of joy that it's different from that kind of happiness. Is really from deep within that arises, and yeah, I can, it's really that deep we can receive a gift and I feel happy. But it's very different. When that joy that come arises from deep within, is your whole being is like, whoa, and yeah, I don't know how to put it, but that sense of deep contentment, deep joy, deep blissfulness, deep peace is deep within. Not that it's not the environment give you, the forest may give you, but it arises from within. That's what I am receiving, that gives, truly. Because when I give a contentment return during my contemplation, this is not the depth. It's not the depth where you're contented, but it can disappear, it can go away, it can just. But this deep contentment is embodied, I will use a word. I think the best word that I can use and describe is called embodiment. It's embody. Not that I do something and I embody it. No, it's a gift that, well, we don't use the word grace. It's a given grace, given gifts from the divine. We want to call it from God, that arises very much from within. Because I do sense this difference. Um, 3 years ago, when the kind of contentment, and the kind of contentment, I think, is I experienced it when I was 21. Was 21. It arises deep from within. Yeah, and I feel the sense. I had self-awareness. I'm a very sensitive person, but now this kind of self-awareness is very deep. Um, I'm aware I'm very sensitive. I pick up things very, very. I'm born like that, very detailed, very so. Some in the past it was, I felt that was it a curse, but now I really see it as a gift, because immediately pop, like, I just witnessed something, a life lesson. I could see the life lessons behind it, behind this beast, behind the bird. What is it saying to me, what is trying to tell me. So I felt so grateful for all the little things that's happening to me, to Jeroen, because yeah, they are not just lessons, but they are really gifts from God. It's very funny. At times when I sit near the window and then literally no birds, and then I will tell you, Jeroen, what happened to the birds? No birds. Suddenly a bird just tung, 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 appear. as you like, the birds heard me. Here I am. I'm here. It's not just happened once, but it's so funny that it's really like, hey, it's so quiet, it's so silent. And the moment I say, where are the birds? And you hear the birds start popping, start coming, having some bath, having bath. So I was like, oh my God, it's bizarre. It's bizarre, but like Nita shared, it's really gives um, whether do you want to receive. Like, for example, I'm fascinated with the buzzard, and we have a buzzard nest. I'm fascinated with the swallows, and we have swallows. And then I'm fascinated with the bats. And the first night that I actually spent outside, I see bats, and so far and so forth. I wanted to grow. I grew pear tree, died on me. I grew cherry tree, died on me, and appeared on my forest. And I wanted to grow pear, and then it appears. So I don't know what to say. I mean, it's like, so. Yeah, all I can say is that for me, God loves us so infinitely. The moment we say yes to ourselves, the moment we say yes to our life, the moment we commit to loving ourselves, um, God loves us so much that He will provide. It's just in the Bible that says He will provide. I'm not trying to say what the Bible says. It hit me now to, it dawned on me, even for Jeroen also. We always rely on our own efforts. And even for Jeroen, he always relied on his own efforts. He shifted too. Things just fall for him. And he begins to see, and he sees the how much God loves us. It's not I'm not talking about material wealth in the sense I want a big car, I want a big house, I want a 5 6. No, it's not that kind. It's more of miracles, gifts that is loving to our soul, to ourselves, to us as a person. God will give. For example, the birds appear because it brings joy, and that is miracle, and that is a gift. And when Uranus is away, I have no vegetables, and I went into my garden and I look on my plants. I see leaves popping up. Oh my God, I can harvest, and I actually can cook a bowl of soup with the vegetables. So it's like those little things that is happening to me. They are gifts, and they are gifts from God. The and also about healing my own fear of scarcity. fear of financial. When I embrace this role and I choose this semi-hermit life, I know that I will not have a full-time job, full-time regular income, or in fact, I have no income because it came up when I came here. It was very clear I want to take rest. I want to recover, nourish myself, doing things that I love, enjoying my time for myself, and spending time with Jeroen, and because it has been quite a very hectic period for us when my father-in-law was very ill, and it really took a toll on us, both of us, in every aspect. Physically tired, emotionally tired, psychologically tired, spiritually also, very drained out. So we really recover. We're very grateful. We really, because of the forest, we find ourselves healed. Within 3 months, I find myself recovering, energy return, um, because I still have my fear and so forth. Suddenly, I felt this shifted. It's like a, yeah, amazing. Even Yurun as well. It's a so that is, yeah, doing I won't use the word doing, living, really literally living, living it, living the balanced life now, and enjoying, the life, and like, yeah, I always believe, as what Nita also shared, that when we nourish ourselves, then we can give fully. I always believe in that. I even train my trainees, what it meant by fully presence. If we don't have the capacity, the energy, we can't be in full presence with people. We can't be in full presence with we can't give totally and fully. So for me, I find that it's important for myself to be nourished, so that I can give it. Because when I serve, and when I do, in any aspect, whether it's therapy, I'm very very present. I gave my 100%. That's why I need to take time off. When after a session, I need to give myself time to unwind, to declutter, or so forth and so forth, to just to yeah. So I would say that very very grateful. And if you are discerning about your life, if you are, I don't know, I have been talking to people, I've been talking to friends, I've been talking to my sometimes I just inspire. I don't tell you what to do, because we all have our own journey, we all have our own decision, we all have our choices. But I really hope that with this conversation, which is inspired when I was showering, then I text Nita and say, to Nita, hey Nita, I would love to have this conversation. Shall we do it? About semi-hermit life, and why we did this forest ministry, why we come together um, to offer this spiritual direction, holistic coaching, whatever, because we are very diversified. We go with you. We're not saying that you have to. We don't. We are not the sort to say you have to live like us. No, because everyone is different. Everyone is unique. I think it's very important to take time off to discern what works for you, what makes you tick, what makes you happy, how can you live a balanced, loving, fruitful life. I won't call it a purpose. I don't know. My journey is like, in the end, I come to realize the journey is really about ourselves. The journey is about self. And often than not, that the things that we need to confront is very much ourselves. So I my inspiration is to encourage you to take time off, whether it's 3 days, or even a day chat with either me or Nita, and listen about your life, or something that is bothering you, or something that is not working out for you, whether it's at home, in the family, at work, or or the place that you stay. Perhaps maybe you would like to take time off for yourself. Perhaps you like to spend time with yourself, and you can always approach Nita or myself. Nita is always at finance, and she goes to Hong Kong. Um, so you can always, if you prefer face to face, you can always visit either one of us. If you want to travel to Europe, I'm in Netherlands. If you want to travel, if you want to stay in Malaysia, Nita, this is wonderful, right? Nita is in Malaysia and I in Europe. Or if you just cannot make time, because I understand that life can be very busy and hectic. Um, so we also encourage you. How can you incorporate? Because it's not about going and then after that you go back to. I have worked with so many people. People has gone for retreats. Oh, it's wonderful, it's great. But how do we incorporate into our life? How do we integrate into our life? How do we live? Actually living it, not just one time go and then come back and then full stop. One time go and then come back full stop. No, I went through that round, so many rounds with it. I had people also, I have friends telling me, yeah, I go for therapy, yeah, I go for retreats, yeah, but then I'm back to square one. Our wish for you, our um, inspiration for you is actually to guide you to incorporate into your life. That's why Nita and myself, we believe in walking. We ourselves walk it. We ourselves live it, because we went through our own journey. If I had not done that, I won't be here sitting here, have a conversation with Nita and telling you this, and inspire me to write whatever that I'm writing. I won't be able to do that, because I may just talk plain theory, because I don't even know what is it. It's very easy to talk, but because I live it, I went through it. How many years? I'm already coming to 47. It's not a joke. It's not a joke that I have walked it to literally be where I am. Nita has been literally where she is. We know it is possible. It is possible, and it is possible whether you have a family, whether you have children. It's about finding out what really works for you. Seriously, what really works for you, and trust the process. I had to go through that, the trust of it took a long time for me to 100% trust, for me, in God, in life, trust in life, in what is unfolding. Even for Yurun too, it was so hard. It was so difficult, because we rely so much on our own efforts, that to trust the universe, to trust God, to trust what is unfolding, until we walked it. It happens to us. It happened to you. It I saw it first. Yurun took a quite long time before he sees it. So it's because we lived it, we walk it, and our desire is to be able to help you. No, I don't use the word of help. It's more of accompany you in this journey, because sometimes I come to learn. You need somebody to have who have walked it. I even told my clients, even told people who had come to me, who are professionals actually, if you have not walked it yourself, you have not entered the depth of the journey yourself, you cannot accompany people. Where you are is where you are. That's all you can do. If you really want to accompany people in your work or whatever, you have to first go into the journey yourself, into the depth. That's why Nita has walked it. She can accompany me. I walked it and I accompany, and it's a very honest, authentic truth. I'm not lying, because I'm aware. If I don't walk the journey, I can never accompany my client in it. No way. I even told my client very honestly. I said, because I have a client who comes to me and say, they have therapies. They work with me at a different thing, and then she can tell me they don't work the way you do. Then I look at her. It's because of the journey that I took. They only work on certain level. So that's why That's why I'm very honest with my client. I'm also very honest with professional who comes to me, and I said, you have to walk it first. If you really want to accompany people at a very deep level, you have to walk it first. First, begin with yourself. Then the rest will follow. So, hopefully that's the conversation that will inspire you, encourage you, motivate you to just come for a wow, 1 day, 3 days, whether online or whether face to face, just have a chit chat with us, whether with Nita or with myself. And Nita has a trainees, and we have a team. Now, foreign ministry is encourage people who want to take on this path with us. Um, but it's not a path that's a typical structure whereby we train you. No, it's actually very much who you are, your gifts, and how because all of us are different. Nita and I are very different. What she is gifted, I don't have it. What I'm gifted, we are very different. So it's about complementing each other. So sometimes we come together and actually work together. So the team that we are looking at is not people who conform into a particular structure for formula. No, it's actually using your gifts. I think the very, very important thing is that you have deep self-awareness, that you're able to attune deeply to yourself. You are able to listen to yourself. So when you can, in all levels, maybe I won't call it level, in the mind, your body, your soul, and your heart, then you are able to listen to others. It's true. It is very, very true, because when you do not listen, my husband maybe one day I should have a conversation with him and then to ask him to share with you. It takes him a very long time to tune in, to go inward, to listen to himself. But the moment he does, he he naturally has that gift, but it's because he doesn't listen to himself. He can't tune in as deep as actually as he could. So all we do, we accompany you. It's not just on discernment and so forth and so forth, but actually to tap deeply within yourself and listen with so that you have very deep self-awareness for yourself as well towards others. That's why our training is called we train you to be compassionate listeners. That's why the silence. And here I am finished with my sharing my story.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And thank you to all of you who've listened to us. And hopefully you come and join us again for our next conversation. We will keep you updated about everything on our website. So thank you.
And
Wonderful
bye-bye.
day ahead. And blessings to you all.
Bye.